Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt and welcome back to another Short War video, and today we have very big news coming out of the Middle East of a commercial vessel being hijacked in the Red Sea by Yemeni Houthi rebels, and right now that situation is very tense and unfolding as we speak, and we don't have a ton of details about the situation, but we do have some, and we'll cover that here in just a moment. Also, we do have big news coming out of Ukraine as well, which we'll cover second after we cover our Israeli news first, and we'll get into those big stories as well. But first, jumping into the story about the ship being seized, we have a post here from Flash News Ukraine, and it says Yemeni Houthis claim to have seized the Israeli ship Galaxy Leader with 22 crew members on board, and according to open sources, the vessel belongs to the British company Raykar Carriers, and the emblem of the largest Japanese shipping company NYK Line is on board, and the Israeli Defense Forces have already stated that the vessel has nothing to do with the state, and there are no Israelis on board. And at the same time, the Office of the Prime Minister of Israel reported that there were 25 sailors from Ukraine, Bulgaria, the Philippines, and Mexico also on board. And right off the bat, you'll notice that the ship is being called an Israeli ship, but yet at the same time, the Israeli Defense Forces are stating that the vessel has nothing to do with their state. I'm not entirely sure why the Israeli Defense Forces are saying that, because it appears pretty clear that the vessel is connected with the state of Israel, but at the same time, maybe the Israelis are trying to take a position where they don't have to escalate so quickly and they have more time to evaluate their options while they distance themselves from the situation. But that's speculation, and right now I'm not sure why that discrepancy exists, but one thing we know for certain is the vessel has been hijacked by the Houthis and it is in their custody, which is a very big deal indeed. And with that being said, we're moving on to our next post here, which is from Firetex News, and we actually have a marine map showing us where the vessel went before it was hijacked. And as you can see here, the Galaxy Leader is actually a car-carrying vessel that transports automobiles to one place to another, or at least that's my understanding. And right here you can see that the vessel was traveling right down the Red Sea off the coast of Saudi Arabia, and this was the location about a day ago right here where you see the yellow arrow, and I presume it got a little bit further down off the coast of Yemen, and this was around the area right here where it was hijacked by the Houthis. And we don't know exactly how it was hijacked. It could have been small watercraft coming up to the vessel and then they boarded the vessel that way, or it could have been a helicopter and the Houthis simply rappelled down and then got on the vessel and took it over. We don't know those details right now at the moment, but either way, it is in their control, and we're going to have to see what the international community is going to do to respond to that. But nonetheless, we are moving on to our next post here, which is from Firetex News. And like I suggested a moment ago, the Israelis seem to be maybe distancing themselves from this situation. We got a statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office today that says we strongly condemn the Iranian attack against an international ship. And notice here that they called it an Iranian attack because the Houthis are basically Iranian proxies in most regards. They operate as an extension of the Iranian state. I know some people are going to disagree with that and say they're separate, but in reality, in my opinion, I think they're pretty much an extension of the Iranian state. But right here we see the Israelis taking a pretty distant response to the situation, which is kind of surprising actually, because you'd expected Israel to react a little bit more harshly, especially considering the fact that the Houthis have been threatening to board and seize the vessel for at least over a week now. And now the time has come that the Israelis will have to act, and it appears they're not really ready to jump into the deep end just yet. So we'll have to wait and see if they actually respond. And with that being said, we're moving on to our next big story of the day, which is from Aliva Hospital. And this is an interesting story indeed. And sadly, I cannot play this video for you, but I can show you the still image right here because it does get a little bit graphic toward the end of it, where I really can't show that on the YouTube videos right now. But this is actually a video from the Aliva Hospital showing some individuals come in the lobby, and we're told that in this group right here are some Hamas fighters, and they're coming in with their AK-47s and also with some individuals right here that seem to be injured, and some are suspecting that maybe these are some of the hostages that were being brought to the hospital by these Hamas fighters. And also you'll notice if you watch this entire video on Twitter that later in the video you'll see the doctors of the hospital along with some nurses acting not very surprised by the Hamas fighters' presence in the hospital, suggesting that maybe they knew they were there all along. And right here in this post from Lahav, we see that the doctors and staff had said to the press directly that they did not know Hamas was operating on the premises, and it appears to be that maybe the doctors were lying. So that wouldn't be shocking to me whatsoever. The Israelis have been saying for a very long time that Hamas has been operating directly out of the Aliva Hospital, and to me, that would be no shocker whatsoever. But with that being said, we're moving on to our next post here, which is from the Spectator Index. And this one says, Iran's supreme leader says Israel has suffered defeat in its war, and that this incapacity reflects the inability of the United States and Western countries. And I don't know what the Iran supreme leader is looking at, but Israel has certainly not suffered defeat by any means. And right now, Hamas's only hope of surviving is that Israel agrees to a 5-day ceasefire in exchange for the release of some of those hostages, so that way Hamas can try to regroup and restructure themselves to where they don't get completely wiped out by Israel's invasion of Gaza. Right now, the invasion is not going good for Hamas whatsoever, and many analysts are saying that several people overestimated the abilities of Hamas to fend off the Israelis, who are armed to the teeth. The Iranian supreme leader is simply putting out some more propaganda here, trying to make it seem like his proxies are winning, when in actuality, they are losing big league. But moving on to our next post here, we have one from BBC News World. And we're going to switch gears just a little bit. This is moving into our Ukrainian big stories of the day. And jumping into our first one here, we see that Putin critic Gherkin, who is still in Russian custody, wants to run in the Russian presidential election. And just when you think that Russia could not get any weirder or crazier, we have here a person who is jailed, Gherkin, who is an extremist according to Putin's standards, wanting to run for president in Russia. That to me seems like a very, very stupid thing that Gherkin could have done, because now Putin's going to want to speed up his demise and take him out even quicker. So Gherkin is exercising some of that fine reasoning skills that he's always had, and he's put himself in even a worse spot. But with that being said, we're moving on to our next post right here, which is from Nexta, and we're learning from the Pentagon that the U.S. has successfully tested a new long-range precision strike missile that will eventually replace the ATACMS. And this is a very big development indeed, because the ATACMS, if y'all have heard, which I'm sure most of you have, is being used by Ukraine in a very widespread manner. It's a very effective tool that they're using. And right now, the U.S. has wanted to create a new one, and they're testing this precision strike missile, which is going to replace the ATACMS system, which is certainly a big leap in development, and I can't wait to see it. And with that being said, we're moving on to our next post here, which is from Samuel Ramani, which says British intelligence says there are, quote unquote, few immediate prospects of major changes in the front line in Ukraine. And I will say that is not the most optimistic outlook we've ever heard throughout the war, but I'll have to say I agree with it somewhat. Because right now, it seems like the Ukrainian war has become somewhat frozen. While the Ukrainians are fighting very hard and the Russians are taking huge losses, it doesn't seem to be that there's really major ground being taken by the Ukrainians. We even have Ukrainian generals coming out and saying that it's pretty much a deadlock at the moment and that nobody's making any significant progress. That's not to say that Ukraine is not going to win in the end. That's simply saying that right now it doesn't look like progress is going as fast as some expected. I'm not going to blame Ukraine for that. They are fighting as hard as possible. The Russians are very heavily entrenched, and that's a very difficult position to fight in, and not to mention that they're moving into the winter as well, which is even a harder time to fight. Some people are going to scoff at this British intelligence report and say that it really doesn't have any credibility, but to me, I think we should at least consider it. It does have some good points to it. And with that being said, we're moving on to our last story of this video, which goes to Global Military Info, which says South Korea and the U.S. have detected movements at North Korea's Soha satellite launching station, which indicate that preparations are underway for a military reconnaissance satellite launch. And if y'all recall, a while back, I think it was about a month ago, North Korea tried to launch a satellite then as well. I'm not sure if they ever got through with it or did it. I think it might have actually blown up. I can't recall for certain. But now we see that North Korea is wanting to launch another one. And, I don't really have high hopes for this one either, but we'll have to wait and see. And it says here, once a launch does occur, expect a J-alert notification from Japan, which is their missile system alert, and we'll have to wait and see if they actually launch it. But with that being said, that is our last story of the day. I hope you found this video informative. We are trying to get back to our short war videos somewhat. It's a little bit difficult to get back into the swing of it, if I'm being perfectly honest, because we haven't done it in such a long time. But hopefully we'll have more time to do more of them. And in the meantime, if you would press a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well, that greatly helps out. And once again, thank you all for supporting the channel, and we'll see you all in the next one. And bye-bye for now.